Hello everybody, David Schuster here. There are growing indications now that the U.S. political establishment is in deep trouble. Survey analysis shows Americans on the right and left have record levels of anger towards the status quo. Democrat Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez says the message is clear.
There is universal frustration in this country, much of it I actually think justified, that is raging at a political establishment that centers corporate interests, billionaires, and puts their needs ahead of the needs of working Americans.
Economic data underscores the working class frustrations. The wealth gap between rich and poor continues to widen. And even though working class wages during the Biden administration have been outpacing inflation, it's nothing compared to the growth of the highest earning Americans. The top 3 richest Americans hold more wealth than half of our nation. 78% of Americans now live paycheck to paycheck, and over 100 million Americans are saddled with medical debt. It's all a huge challenge for political leaders and both major political parties. But it also represents an opportunity, as underscored by Teamsters President Sean O'Brien.
The good news is that, the Democrats have an opportunity to refocus and try and reclaim why they lost the working class. And the Republicans have been saying all along they want to be the working class people. So it's a great opportunity for both sides, especially the Republican, to prove that. We've got a lot of issues that we need to get resolved in this country, and we've got to do it.
Those issues include a labor shortage in the manufacturing industry and worker retraining for higher tech jobs across multiple business sectors. Union membership has doubled over the past 5 years, and the GOP, which used to be the party of union busting, has been pledging to work with labor to try and solve economic challenges and wealth inequality. Donald Trump in particular has vowed to be the most pro-union Republican president in modern political history. And with that comes high expectations.
What do you want to see out of Donald Trump?
Well, I want to see what not only Donald Trump was saying, but a lot of the Republicans. We've got good working relationship with Senator Hawley. Right. We've got good working relationship with Senator Marshall, and many others. We want to make certain that what they're saying and what they do is going to be consistent. They want to work with labor. They want to work with the American people, American workers. And, we want results, not excuses. And look, the great part about this whole process is we got 4 more years. If people don't, on either side, live up to their promises and or fix their problems, we got 4 years to build a machine to get the right people in there to make the right decisions on working people.
The political threat and the strategy from O'Brien and other labor leaders is brilliant, because both major political parties are now actively vying for labor support, so unions can play the parties against each other to try to get even more help, concessions, and progress. It used to be the Democratic Party that was the party of organized labor and the working class, but big money interests and corporate desires have seeped into the Democratic Party. And Republicans who have their own allegiance to big money and corporate power have an opportunity if they can cut back on their fealty towards the wealthy and show more support for unions and working class. It all means the next few years should be great for organized labor, and in my view, that's great for the U.S. economy. When the middle class grows and expands, society thrives. When the middle class disappears, as we've seen in history, great nations fall apart. One key political point in all of this, the conservative right and the progressive left have at least one issue in common. They are both trying to get big money out of politics so that working class Americans and organized labor have more influence and corporate interests have less. And again, union leaders like O'Brien are trying to show they are not bound to either political party, as O'Brien noted in his speech at the Republican convention this summer. Here's a snippet of that speech, followed some by astute analysis from TYT.
We are not beholden to anyone or any party. Corporatists hate when working people join together to form unions. But for a century, major employers have waged a war against labor by forming corporate unions of their own. We need to call the Chamber of Commerce and the business roundtables what they are. They are unions for big business. Remember, elites have no party, elites have no nation. Their loyalty is to the balance sheet and to the stock price at the expense of the American worker. I think we can all agree D.C. is a pretty treacherous area. Most legislation is never meant to go anywhere, and it's all talk.
By appearing, he's building leverage to use again with or against the Democrats.
Totally.
Okay. So he's saying, hey, listen, you guys take us for granted. Here I am giving a keynote speech at the Republican convention. I'm not playing with you guys.
Yeah.
And that is good, strong leverage building. There you go. That's using your power. Okay.
Yeah. He says he looks out the window in that speech. He said, I look out the window of my office. I look at the Capitol. I see all these people going in there. They don't do anything, basically. And so he didn't say Republicans or Democrats. He said the whole lot of you. And it was a fascinating speech. Mario Cuomo gave a very progressive speech at a Democratic convention that, would compare progressive speeches, but this was a speech about workers that this convention, a Republican convention, has never heard. And I don't think they're going to have heard it too well. I think he's going to get criticism from the people here.
Yeah. And so he mentioned corporatism again at a Republican convention. And so that corporatism is never mentioned in a Democratic convention because it's considered too radical to mention corporate rule. Again, partly because their donors finance the whole thing and their donors are all corporations.
Right.
But he connected, this is the most important part to me out of all of this. He connected the elites, because the Republicans always talk about elites, right? And they hate the elites. He connected the elites to corporations. So like when the Republicans do it, it's nefarious, but it's vague. It's like, oh, the international elites, global elites, right? And you don't know what they're referring to. They never clarified because, again, that's actually the people who backed the Republican Party, right? And the Democratic Party. So that's why they never clarified it. But he clarified it. He said, no, it's the corporate elites that run this country. And the Republican voters needed to hear that message because that's going to connect.
I agree, and I actually think that when you connect elites to corporate elites, it resonates across the political spectrum, even with people who are not engaged in politics. There is a fundamental frustration, as AOC said at the beginning, with the status quo and the ongoing corporate welfare, if you will, that goes to the most powerful business interests and does not seem to go to the working class. It's that old analogy about the US government and both major political parties doing more for Wall Street than for Main Street. A lot of Americans cannot articulate it or boil it down, but they feel the injustice and sense that our government and political system have been corrupted, and most of the benefits are going to the elites.
Most important point in terms of this particular election, okay? Donald Trump letting him speak, even if they didn't properly vet the speech, even if he didn't endorse him, and even if he gave a super progressive speech, was a brilliant move. And it's because it
was because you could say it now. You say it, and even if people don't hear the speech. Well, the Teamsters spoke at the Republican convention, the head of the Teamsters. So it gives a union guy who didn't watch the speech or who doesn't pay close attention, but who votes because they always do. Well, if O'Brien spoke there, then we're good. And I like Trump.
So it's great for that. It also really burnishes his populist bona fides. And if you want to be populist, you say words like bona fides. Okay, seriously, like it makes him look like a real populist. And the other thing it does is it gives you some hope that he's going to listen to outside voices and be different than an average president. Now, is that true? I don't know, but it was true tonight. Yeah. And you do have to give him credit for that.
Indeed, Donald Trump pulled off a brilliant political move by having O'Brien speak at the Republican National Convention. And it clearly worked, given the larger than usual number of union voters who supported the Republican presidential ticket in this 2024 election. The big question now, as Cenk and Michael identified, is whether Trump actually follows through in his commitment to organized labor and governs with the kind of populist policies and tone he promoted in his campaign. Let me be clear. I do not think that Donald Trump should be trusted by anybody, and I would be shocked if he actually follows through with his populism. However, unions and organized labor now have more leverage over both political parties than at any time in the last 50 years. I've never seen a political environment so opportunistic for unions than the era we are in now. And union leaders like Sean O'Brien are playing it well, demanding progress from all lawmakers in Washington instead of promoting a Republican-Democrat divide. Organized labor is inviting everybody to be part of helping America's working class. And as as we started with this video, America's working class is raging and demanding big changes in Washington. The status quo and the corporate elite are now the obstacles that need to be removed or diminished in our political system, and the interests of Main Street, of the working class, need to be prioritized. There is no guarantee that lawmakers, even in this new era, will follow through, but this is a good time to be advocating for union and big labor concerns, because both major political parties now see the working class as political partners, and that itself is progress. I'm David Schuster. Thanks for joining us.
All right, so let me get you respond then to Jen Rubin, who writes an opinion column over at the Washington Post. She says Democrats should not try to find common ground with Trump. She says a depressingly high number of elected Democrats are declaring their intent to find, quote, common ground with President-elect Donald Trump and his, as she calls it, crackpot cabinet picks. Their naive, tone-deaf declarations epitomize an infatuation with bipartisanship for bipartisanship's sake. She says you shouldn't be doing it. Your response?
We need to look at it issue by issue. No one is saying that we should work with Republicans or Donald Trump if there's any proposal to cut Social Security, or if there is a proposal to politicize the Justice Department, or if there is a proposal to abolish the Department of Education. Of course, Democrats will oppose that with our values. But if the president has actually a good idea to bring manufacturing back, or to cut wasteful defense spending, or to make our food system safer and get the additives out of our food, why wouldn't we want to work on things that are good for the American people? This is the part of politics that folks are sick about, that we're always looking at things from a partisan lens as opposed to what's good for America. And what they want actually is change agents on the Republican side and the Democratic side.
On all of that, Rokan is correct. Democrats should take everything issue by issue. Support Donald Trump on the occasions when he does boost progressive priorities. Fight Donald Trump on his conservative agenda, including giving tax breaks to the wealthy and in things that will only hurt workers. There's nothing wrong with disagreements and vigorous debate, but do it on the merits of the issue, not because of the partisan politics. If Donald Trump is forced to maintain the status quo of governance because he cannot get congressional votes through Congress, that's fine. In my view, Trump will do less harm to America if he has to spend more time on his golf courses. Just make him a president that cannot get his conservative legislative agenda through Congress.